Linda Garrett sat in the fourth row of bleachers at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Paris Island, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The South Carolina sun beat down on the parade ground where hundreds of new Marines stood in perfect formation, waiting for their graduation ceremony to begin. She was 56 years old, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a modest blue dress and sensible shoes. To anyone looking at her, she was just another proud mother, here to watch her son become a Marine. And she was proud, incredibly proud. Her son Daniel stood somewhere in that sea of dress uniforms about to complete the transformation from boy to Marine. She'd raised him alone after his father died, worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, and now here he was, standing tall, standing strong. Linda's eyes traced the rows of recruits, searching for Daniel's face. When she found him, her heart swelled. He looked so much like his father had at that age. The same strong jawline, the same serious expression, the same pride in his bearing. "Excuse me, ma'am?" A young woman squeezed past Linda to reach an empty seat. She was maybe 25, heavily pregnant, with tears already streaming down her face. "My husband's graduating today. I can't believe I almost missed it. The baby's due next week." Linda smiled warmly. "You made it, that's what matters." "Is this your first time at a Marine graduation?" the young woman asked. Linda hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "My son's graduation? Yes." It wasn't a lie, not exactly. The ceremony began with the posting of colors. Linda stood with everyone else, her hand over her heart, as the Marine Corps band played and the flags were presented. She knew every note of the music, every step of the ceremony. She'd stood through dozens of these graduations before. But never as just a mother in the crowd. The commanding officer stepped up to the microphone, beginning his address to the new Marines and their families. Linda listened, but her mind drifted. She thought about the last time she'd been here 20 years ago. She'd been standing down there on the parade ground, not up here in the bleachers. She'd been wearing the uniform, not a civilian dress. She'd been someone else entirely. Linda's right hand unconsciously moved to her left wrist, where her watch covered a small tattoo. She'd gotten it so long ago in what felt like another lifetime. Most people never noticed it. She made sure of that. "Look at them," the pregnant woman beside her whispered, wiping her eyes. "They all look so brave." "They are," Linda said quietly, "every single one of them." The ceremony continued. New Marines received their Eagle, Globe, and Anchor emblems. Families cheered and cried. Cameras flashed. It was beautiful and moving, just as Linda remembered. When Daniel's name was called, Linda stood and applauded, tears streaming down her face. Her son, her baby boy, now a United States Marine. After the ceremony ended, families flooded onto the parade ground to find their Marines. Linda made her way through the crowd, searching for Daniel. When she spotted him, he was surrounded by his drill instructors, talking animatedly. "Mom," Daniel broke away and rushed over, wrapping her in a careful hug, still mindful of his dress uniform. "You made it." "Of course I made it," Linda said, holding him tight. "I wouldn't have missed this for anything." Daniel pulled back, beaming. "Mom, I want you to meet someone, my senior drill instructor." He gestured to a stern-looking man in his 40s who'd approached behind him. "Staff Sergeant Martinez, this is my mother, Linda Garrett." Staff Sergeant Martinez extended his hand. "Ma'am, your son is an excellent Marine. You should be very proud." "I am," Linda said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for him." As they talked, Linda noticed Martinez's eyes drift to her wrist. Her watch had shifted slightly during the hug with Daniel, revealing just the edge of her tattoo. Martinez's expression changed almost imperceptibly. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the small trident that was partially visible. Linda quickly adjusted her watch, covering the tattoo completely, but Martinez had already seen it. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "forgive me for asking, but that tattoo on your wrist, is that a sealed trident?" The noise of the crowd seemed to fade away. Daniel looked at his mother in confusion. "Mom, what's he talking about?" Linda felt her heart racing. She'd been so careful. For 20 years, she'd been so careful. "I think you're mistaken, Staff Sergeant," she said calmly. "It's just an old tattoo from my younger days, nothing significant." But Martinez wasn't backing down. He'd spent enough years in the Corps to know what he was looking at. "Ma'am, that's a very specific design. The eagle clutching the trident, the anchor, and the pistol. That's not something people just get as a random tattoo." Other drill instructors were starting to notice the conversation. One of them, a gunnery sergeant with 20 years of service ribbons on his chest, moved closer. "Is there a problem here?" the gunny asked. "This woman has a sealed Trident tattooed on her wrist," Martinez said, his tone respectful but firm. Daniel looked completely lost. "Mom, what are they talking about? You never served in the military. You worked as a nurse, and then you managed that medical office." Linda closed her eyes. She'd known this day might come eventually. She'd hoped it wouldn't be here at her son's proudest moment in front of hundreds of people. "Daniel," she said quietly, "there are some things I never told you about my past." The gunnery sergeant stepped forward, his expression serious. "Ma'am, with all due respect, women can't be Navy SEALs. They aren't allowed in that program. So either that's a fake tattoo, which would be disrespectful as hell, or there's a story here that doesn't add up." A small crowd was forming now. Other Marines, other families, all curious about what was happening. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice shaking slightly, "please tell me what's going on." Linda looked at her son, at the confusion and concern in his eyes. She looked at the Marines surrounding them, at their skeptical, almost hostile expressions. They thought she was stolen valor, someone pretending to be something she wasn't. She'd spent 2 decades building a quiet life, staying invisible, avoiding exactly this kind of attention. But now she was out of options. "You're right," Linda said, meeting the gunnery sergeant's eyes. "Women can't be Navy SEALs, not officially, not on paper." She pulled back her watch, revealing the tattoo completely. "But 25 years ago, I was part of a classified program that didn't officially exist." The gunny's eyes widened. "Are you telling me?" "I'm not telling you anything," Linda interrupted firmly. "Because officially what I did never happened. The program was shut down, the records were sealed, and everyone involved signed non-disclosure agreements that don't expire." She paused. "But yes, I earned this Trident, I bled for it, and I've kept quiet about it for 20 years because that's what I was ordered to do." Staff Sergeant Martinez looked stunned. "Ma'am, I don't know whether to believe you or call military police." "Call them if you want," Linda said calmly. "But my records are classified at a level that you won't be able to access. You'll hit a wall, and then someone in Washington will ask why you're digging into classified operations from the 1990s. Daniel grabbed her arm gently. "Mom, please, I don't understand any of this. You were a Navy SEAL." "I was a lot of things," Linda said softly, looking at her son. "But for the last 20 years, I've just been your mom, and that's all I wanted to be." The gunnery sergeant pulled out his phone. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to verify this. What's your full name and service number?" Linda rattled off a number she hadn't spoken aloud in 2 decades. "Linda Marie Garrett, but my service records will show me as Linda Reeves. That was my maiden name. And when you try to access those records, you'll need clearance I guarantee you don't have." The gunny made the call. They stood there in awkward silence while he spoke quietly to someone on the phone, walking a few feet away for privacy. Daniel hadn't let go of Linda's arm. "Mom, why didn't you tell me? All these years you let me think." "That I was just a nurse who worked hard to raise you." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Because that's what I wanted you to think, sweetheart. I wanted you to have a normal childhood. I wanted you to see me as your mom, not as what I used to be." "But I joined the Marines because I wanted to serve like Dad did," Daniel said. "If I'd known you served too." "Would it have changed anything?" Linda asked gently. "Would you have tried less hard? Would you be less proud of what you accomplished today?" Daniel was quiet, thinking. The gunnery sergeant returned, his face pale. "Ma'am, I just spoke with my commanding officer. He made some calls." He paused, clearly struggling with what he was about to say. "He said to tell you that your service record is sealed under executive order and that I should apologize for questioning you and leave you alone." Martinez looked shocked. "Gunny, what did they tell you?" "They told me to drop it," the gunny said firmly, "and they told me that this woman is to be treated with the utmost respect." He turned to Linda and actually saluted her. "Ma'am, I apologize for any disrespect." Linda didn't return the salute. She was in civilian clothes, and it would only draw more attention. "It's fine, gunnery sergeant. You were doing your job." But the damage was done. People were starring. Word was spreading through the crowd. The mysterious woman with the sealed trident who'd been verified by command. A Marine Corps photographer who'd been documenting the graduation approached. "Ma'am, I couldn't help but overhear. Would you be willing to?" No, Linda said firmly. No photos, no interviews, no attention. I came here to watch my son graduate, that's all. She took Daniel's arm. Can we please just go somewhere quiet and talk? Daniel nodded, still looking shell-shocked. They walked away from the crowd toward the family area where picnic tables were set up. Several Marines watched them go, whispering to each other. When they were finally alone, Daniel sat down heavily on a bench. Mom, I don't even know where to start. You were a Navy SEAL. Not officially, Linda said, sitting beside him. Like I said, the program I was part of didn't exist on paper. But how, when, why didn't you ever say anything? Linda took a deep breath. It was 1989. I was 22 years old and finishing my nursing training through the Navy. I was good at my job, really good. But I was also athletic, competitive, and frustrated that there were so many opportunities I couldn't pursue because I was a woman. She looked out at the parade ground, remembering. One day, I was approached by a naval intelligence officer. He told me about a program they were developing, a trial to see if women could complete SEAL training and operate in certain environments where male operators couldn't go. It was completely off the books, classified, experimental. And you said yes, Daniel said quietly. I said yes, Linda smiled sadly. I was young and stupid and desperate to prove I could do anything a man could do, so I went through training. It was hell, worse than hell. We lost half the candidates in the first month, but I made it through. And then I was assigned to a team that officially didn't exist. What did you do? Linda shook her head. I can't tell you that, Daniel, even now, even after all these years. Some missions are still classified, but I can tell you that I served for 6 years. I went places I can't name. I did things I can't talk about, and I did them well. So why did you stop? Why did you leave? Linda's expression darkened. Because the program was shut down. Politics, mostly. Some people in Washington didn't like the idea of women in combat roles, especially in special operations. They shut us down, sealed all the records, and made us sign agreements that we'd never talk about what we'd done. She paused. Most of us just tried to build normal lives afterward. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, and Dad, did he know? Your father knew everything, Linda said softly. He was a Marine Special Operations. We met on a joint mission. He understood the work, the sacrifice, the secrets. When the program ended and I left the Navy, he supported my decision to walk away completely, to just be Linda Garrett, nurse and eventually mother. Her voice cracked. When he died, I made a choice. I could either tell you the truth about both of us and risk you growing up in the shadow of parents who'd lived dangerous lives, or I could give you a normal childhood with a mom who was just there, present, safe. You chose to protect me, Daniel said. I chose to be your mom, Linda corrected. Everything else, the missions, the medals I can't display, the commendations that don't officially exist, none of that mattered as much as making sure you grew up feeling loved and secure. Daniel was quiet, processing everything. Then he looked at his mother with new eyes. The nightmares you used to have, the way you always checked the locks 3 times before bed, how you taught me self-defense when I was 8 years old, the fact that you can field strip and reassemble a handgun faster than anyone I've ever seen, that all makes sense now. Linda smiled weakly. I tried to hide it, but old habits die hard. And today, when I graduated, you were down there watching me become a Marine while you're, he trailed off. While I'm what? A former operator who can't talk about her service. Someone who earned one of the most difficult qualifications in the military but will never be officially recognized for it. Linda shook her head. Daniel, I am so proud of you. You earned this. You worked hard, you persevered, and you became a Marine through your own determination. That's worth more than anything I ever did. I don't know about that, Mom. They sat in silence for a while, watching other families celebrate with their new Marines. Finally, Daniel said, What do we do now? People saw what happened. They're going to talk. Let them talk, Linda said. By tomorrow, they'll forget, and anyone who tries to dig deeper will hit the same walls the gunnery sergeant hit. My past is locked away, and it's going to stay that way. But even as she said it, Linda knew things had changed. The secret she'd guarded for 20 years was out, at least partially, and she had no idea what that might mean for the quiet life she'd built. A voice called out from behind them, Mrs. Garrett. They turned to find a Marine colonel approaching, his uniform decorated with ribbons that spoke of extensive combat experience. He was in his 60s, with white hair and sharp blue eyes. Yes, Linda said cautiously. Colonel James Brennan, he introduced himself. "I'm the commanding officer here. Might I have a word with you, privately?" Linda looked at Daniel, who nodded. "I'll go find my platoon, but Mom, we're going to talk more about this later, right?" "Of course," Linda promised. After Daniel left, Colonel Brennan sat down on the bench. "Mrs. Garrett, I received a very interesting phone call about 20 minutes ago from someone at JSOC who suggested I treat you with considerable respect and avoid asking questions about your background." "That sounds like good advice," Linda said. "It does," the colonel agreed. "But I'm a curious man, and I'm also old enough to remember some rumors from the early 90s about certain experimental programs." He studied her face. "You were part of Echo program, weren't you?" Linda's eyes widened slightly. Echo program was the classified code name, one that very few people would know. "I can neither confirm nor deny," she began. "I know," Colonel Brennan interrupted gently. "And I'm not asking you to, but I want you to know something. When I was a young captain in 1991, my reconnaissance team was pinned down in Iraq. We were compromised, outnumbered, and running out of time. A SEAL team came in to extract us." He paused. "The team leader was a woman. She got all 15 of us out alive when everyone said it was impossible." Linda felt her breath catch. "Her call sign was Nightingale," the colonel continued. "I never got her real name. The mission was classified, but I never forgot what she did." Linda's hands were shaking now. Nightingale, she hadn't heard that name in 25 years. "Colonel," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "I just wanted you to know that some of us remember, some of us know that heroes don't always get recognition, and some of us are grateful anyway." He stood and offered his hand. "Your son is a fine Marine, ma'am. You should be proud." "I am," Linda managed. "And for what it's worth," Colonel Brennan added, "he comes from good stock." After the colonel left, Linda sat alone for a long time, trying to steady her breathing. The past she'd buried was rising up, and she wasn't sure she could push it back down. She looked at the tattoo on her wrist, the trident she'd earned through blood, sweat, and determination. The symbol of a program that officially never existed and a service that could never be acknowledged. For 20 years, she'd been invisible. But now, people were starting to see her, and she had no idea what came next. Linda spent the rest of the day with Daniel, meeting his fellow Marines, attending a family celebration dinner, and trying to pretend everything was normal. But she could feel eyes on her everywhere she went. Word had spread among the drill instructors and senior Marines. The woman with the SEAL Trident, the classified operator, the mystery. By evening, Daniel's questions could no longer be avoided. They sat in her hotel room, the graduation festivities over, and he looked at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. "Tell me about Iraq," he said. "The mission Colonel Brennan mentioned." Linda shook her head. "Daniel, I can't. I signed documents." "Then tell me something," he interrupted, his voice frustrated. "Anything, because right now I feel like I don't know who my mother is." The words hit Linda like a physical blow. She sat down heavily on the bed. "You know exactly who I am. I'm the woman who sat up with you when you were sick, who taught you to ride a bike, who went to every baseball game, every school event. That's who I am." "But you're also someone who did things that a Marine colonel still remembers 25 years later," Daniel said. "Someone who earned a SEAL Trident when women weren't even allowed in combat roles. That's important, Mom. That matters." "Does it?" Linda asked quietly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it just feels like something that caused me pain and cost me years of normal life." Daniel sat beside her. "Dad was special operations. You said you met on a joint mission. Tell me about him. Tell me about the parts you haven't shared." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to speak. "Your father's name was James Garrett. You know that. What you don't know is that he was Marine Force Reconnaissance, one of the best operators I ever worked with." She smiled sadly. "I met him in 1993. I was 26. He was 28. We were both on a mission I can't describe in a place I can't name." "But you can tell me about him," Daniel pressed gently. "He saved my life," Linda said. "Things went wrong during the operation. I was separated from my team, injured and pinned down. Your father's team wasn't supposed to be in that area, but he heard my distress call. He came for me anyway, against orders, and got me out." She pulled out her wallet and removed a small, worn photograph. It showed a young man in Marine dress uniform, strong and handsome with kind eyes. Daniel had seen this picture before, but he looked at it differently now. After that mission, we couldn't stop thinking about each other, Linda continued. It took us a year to actually start a relationship, fraternization rules, different commands, all the complications. But eventually, we made it work. We got married in 1995, small ceremony, just a few friends who had security clearance. And then you left the program. Not immediately, but yes, when Echo program was shut down in 1996, I left the Navy entirely. Your father supported that decision. He said I'd given enough and it was time to build a different kind of life. Linda's voice cracked. We had 3 good years together. We bought a house. We talked about having children, and then he was killed in a training accident. Daniel knew this part of the story, or at least the version Linda had always told him. His father had died when Daniel was just a baby. It wasn't really a training accident, was it? He asked quietly. Linda shook her head. It was a mission, classified. Something went wrong. I can't tell you more than that because I don't know more than that. They wouldn't tell me the details, just that he died serving his country and that his service would remain classified. So you lost everything, Daniel said. Your career, your husband, your whole life. Not everything, Linda said firmly, placing her hand over Daniel's. I had you, a 6-month-old baby who needed his mother, and I decided right then that I wasn't going to let the military take anything else from me. I was going to raise you in a normal, safe, stable environment. No missions, no danger, no secrets that would hang over your childhood. But you kept the tattoo. Linda looked at her wrist. I earned this. It's the only proof I have that those years existed, that they mattered. I covered it up, I never talked about it, but I couldn't bring myself to have it removed. They sat in silence for a while. Then Daniel asked, do you regret it, any of it? I regret that your father isn't here to see the man you've become, Linda said. I regret the things I can't tell you, the experiences I can't share. But do I regret serving? No, I did important work. I saved lives. And even if no one can ever acknowledge it publicly, I know it mattered. There was a knock at the hotel room door. Linda tensed automatically, old instincts kicking in. She checked the peephole and saw Staff Sergeant Martinez standing in the hallway. She opened the door cautiously. Staff Sergeant. Ma'am, I apologize for the intrusion. Martinez looked uncomfortable. But there's a situation developing that you should know about. What kind of situation? Someone at the graduation recorded the confrontation earlier when we were asking about your tattoo. They posted it on social media. It's starting to get attention. Linda's stomach dropped. How much attention? Enough that military bloggers are picking it up. People are asking questions about Echo program, about classified female SEAL operators, about whether the story is real or fake. Martinez paused. There are also some people claiming you're a fraud. Daniel stood up. That's ridiculous. Command verified. Command verified that her records are sealed, Martinez interrupted. But they didn't confirm or deny her service. So now there are people online saying she's stolen valor, that she's lying about being a SEAL, that the Trident tattoo is fake. Linda closed her eyes. This was exactly what she'd feared. It'll blow over. These things always do. Maybe, Martinez said, but there's something else. A reporter from a military news organization called The Base. They want to interview you. They're saying this could be a major story about women in special operations, about classified programs, about... No, Linda said firmly. Absolutely not. I don't talk to reporters. I don't do interviews. Ma'am, if you don't tell your story, other people will tell it for you, and they might get it wrong. I signed a non-disclosure agreement, Linda said. Even if I wanted to talk, which I don't, I legally can't. The details of Echo program are classified. They'll stay classified. End of story. Martinez nodded. I understand. I just thought you should know what's happening. He hesitated. For what it's worth, ma'am, I believe you. What happened today, the way Command reacted, the way Colonel Brennan spoke about you, that tells me everything I need to know. After Martinez left, Daniel looked at his mother with concern. Mom, this is getting bigger. What are you going to do? Nothing, Linda said. I'm going to go home, go back to work, and let this blow over. People have short attention spans. Something else will become the story of the day, and everyone will forget about the mysterious woman at the Marine graduation. But over the next 3 days, as Linda returned to her home in Virginia and tried to resume her normal life, it became clear that the story wasn't dying down. It was getting bigger. Military blogs debated whether ECHO program had actually existed. Journalists tried to find documentation. Some former SEALs spoke up, saying they'd heard rumors of such a program in the early 90s. Others called it a conspiracy theory. The stolen valor accusations were the worst. People who'd never met Linda, who knew nothing about her, declared with confidence that she was a fraud seeking attention. They analyzed her tattoo from the grainy video footage. They questioned why she'd never spoken up before. They demanded proof that couldn't legally be provided. Linda tried to ignore it. She went to work at the medical office where she managed patient scheduling. She avoided social media. She didn't respond to the reporter emails and phone calls that somehow found her. But then, on the fourth day, she received a visitor at her office. The woman was in her 50s, wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. She introduced herself as Margaret Chen, attorney. "Mrs. Garrett, I represent 3 former members of ECHO program," Chen said. "They've asked me to reach out to you." Linda's hands went still on her keyboard. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Garrett, my clients served in the same program you did. They've been watching the news coverage of your situation and they're concerned. They're also frustrated." "Frustrated about what?" "That after 25 years of silence, their service still can't be acknowledged. That they're still bound by NDAs for a program that doesn't officially exist. And that when one of them is finally noticed, she's being accused of fraud." Chen leaned forward. "They want to do something about it." Linda shook her head. "We signed agreements, we can't talk about it." "Actually, there may be a legal path forward," Chen said. "NDAs have limits, and times have changed. Women are now allowed in combat roles in special operations. The political climate that forced ECHO program to be classified may no longer exist." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that it might be time to petition the government to declassify ECHO program, at least partially, enough to acknowledge that it existed and that the women who served in it deserve recognition." Chen pulled documents from her briefcase. "My clients have already begun the process. They're asking if you want to join them." Linda stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. "If we do this, if we push to declassify the program, what happens?" "It's a long process," Chen admitted. "It could take years. There would be hearings, reviews, political considerations, and there's no guarantee of success. But at minimum, it would establish a legal record that you and the other women served. It would make it harder for people to claim you're frauds." "Or it could paint targets on our backs," Linda said quietly. "Some of the missions we ran, the people we worked against, they're still out there, still dangerous. My clients are aware of the risks, but they believe the benefits outweigh them. And Mrs. Garrett, you have a son who just became a Marine. Don't you want him to know the truth about his mother, about his father?" Linda thought about Daniel, about the confusion and hurt in his eyes when he'd said he felt like he didn't know who she was. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course, but I should tell you, there's going to be a press conference in 3 days at the National Press Club in Washington. My clients are going to speak publicly for the first time about ECHO program. They'll be violating their NDAs, which could have legal consequences, but they've decided it's worth the risk." Chen handed Linda a business card. "If you want to join them, call me. If not, they'll understand." After Chen left, Linda sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the business card. For 20 years, she'd been invisible, safe, protected behind her silence. But now the silence was being broken, with or without her. That evening, Linda made a phone call. The number she dialed was one she'd been given 25 years ago and told to use only in emergencies. She didn't know if it would still work. A man answered on the 3rd ring. "Yes." "This is Nightingale," Linda said, using her old call sign for the first time in decades. "I need to speak with someone about ECHO program." There was a long pause, then, "Hold, please." 5 minutes later, a different voice came on the line. A woman's voice, authoritative and familiar. "Linda, is that really you?" Linda's breath caught. She recognized the voice immediately. "Commander Wilson." "It's Admiral Wilson now," the woman said with a slight laugh. "Though I'm retired, Linda, I heard about what happened at Paris Island. I've been waiting for you to call." "You knew?" "Of course I knew. I still have friends in the community. When your name popped up in a security query, they let me know." Admiral Wilson paused. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better," Linda admitted. Ma'am, I need advice. There are 3 other ECHO program veterans who want to petition for declassification. They want me to join them. Margaret Chen's clients. Yes, I know about that too. Should I do it? Will it work? Admiral Wilson was quiet for a moment. Linda, I'm going to tell you something that's not widely known. For the past 5 years, I've been working with the Pentagon to review classified programs from the 90s and determine which ones can be safely declassified. ECHO program is on that list. Linda sat up straighter. What? Times have changed. Women are now serving in roles that were considered impossible when we were young. The political and social barriers that made ECHO program so controversial, they don't exist the same way anymore. The Secretary of Defense is actually supportive of acknowledging your service. Then why haven't they done it already? Because it's complicated. There are operational security concerns, legal issues, diplomatic considerations. These things take time. Admiral Wilson paused. But if you and the other ECHO veterans were to publicly request declassification, it might accelerate the process. It would demonstrate that the participants themselves want recognition and are willing to accept the risks that come with it. Linda's mind was racing. What about the NDAs, the legal consequences? Leave that to me, the Admiral said. If you decide to move forward, I'll make sure the Justice Department understands that you have my support and the support of people at the Pentagon. You won't be prosecuted for telling the truth about your service. And the security risks, the people we worked against, are either dead or have much bigger problems than you. Linda, the world has changed. The operations you ran 25 years ago, they're history now. Important history, but history nonetheless. Linda took a deep breath. If I do this, what happens to my life, my privacy, my ability to just be Daniel's mom? I can't promise that won't change, Admiral Wilson said honestly. Once your story is out there, you can't put it back in the box. You'll have attention, questions, probably requests for interviews and speeches. It will be uncomfortable. But your son will know who you really are. Other women who are fighting to serve in special operations will have role models, and you'll finally be able to stop hiding. The Admiral's voice softened. Linda, you were one of the finest operators I ever commanded. You earned that Trident through blood and sweat. Don't you think it's time you got to wear it with pride? After the call ended, Linda sat in her quiet house thinking. She thought about James, her husband, who died for his country with no public recognition. She thought about Daniel, who'd just begun his own service journey. She thought about the 3 women she'd served with who were willing to stand up and demand acknowledgement. And she thought about the 20 years she'd spent invisible, hiding who she was, pretending her service didn't matter. Linda picked up her phone and called the number on Margaret Chen's card. Ms. Chen, this is Linda Garrett. I'm in. When is that press conference? The National Press Club in Washington, D.C. was packed. Journalists filled every seat, cameras lined the back wall, and the air buzzed with anticipation. News of the press conference had leaked 2 days earlier, and speculation had been rampant. 4 women claiming to be former Navy SEALs from a classified program. It was either the story of the decade or an elaborate hoax. Linda sat backstage with the 3 other women, all of them wearing business attire, all of them looking nervous but determined. There was Catherine Hawk Morrison, 60 years old, now a cybersecurity consultant. She'd been the first woman to complete ECHO program training. There was Patricia Ghost Rodriguez, 58, a retired police detective from Miami. She'd served in ECHO program for 7 years, the longest of any participant. And there was Jennifer Razor Kim, 55, who now taught martial arts to at-risk youth in Los Angeles. She'd been wounded 3 times during her ECHO service. They'd all kept their silence for 25 years, and now they were about to break it. You ready for this? Catherine asked Linda, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. No, Linda said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. Margaret Chen appeared with Admiral Wilson beside her. The Admiral was in civilian clothes, but she carried herself with unmistakable military bearing. Ladies, Admiral Wilson said, before you go out there, I want you to know that you have support at the highest levels. The Secretary of Defense is watching. The President has been briefed. This isn't just 4 women telling their story. This is the beginning of a formal review of ECHO program with the goal of declassification. Patricia looked shocked. The President knows about this. The President knows about you, Admiral Wilson corrected, and supports your service being acknowledged, but I won't lie to you, there will be pushback. There are people in the intelligence community who want Echo program to stay buried. There will be questions, investigations, and challenges. You need to be prepared for that. We are, Catherine said firmly, and the other three women nodded. Margaret Chen checked her watch. It's time. They walked out onto the stage together, four women who'd been invisible for decades, now stepping into the brightest spotlight imaginable. The camera flashes were blinding. Catherine approached the microphone first. She was the unofficial leader of the group, the one who'd initiated the declassification petition. Good afternoon, she began, her voice clear and strong. My name is Catherine Morrison. 28 years ago, I became the first woman to complete Navy SEAL training as part of a classified program designated Echo Program. Today, I'm here with three of my fellow Echo Program graduates to tell a story that's been kept secret for far too long. The room was completely silent. In 1989, the United States Navy initiated an experimental program to determine whether women could complete SEAL training and operate effectively in special operations environments. 5 women were selected from across the military. The program was classified at the highest levels. We were told that if we succeeded, we would be pioneers. If we failed, the program would be terminated and we would return to our regular duties. No one would ever know we'd tried. Catherine paused, looking at her fellow operators. All 5 of us completed training. We earned our Tridents. And for the next 7 years, we conducted classified operations in locations I still cannot name, against threats I still cannot fully describe. We bled for this country. We sacrificed for this country. And we did it knowing that our service would never be publicly acknowledged. Patricia stepped up to the microphone next. I'm Patricia Rodriguez. My call sign was Ghost. I served in Echo program from 1990 to 1997. During that time, I participated in 23 classified operations. I was wounded twice. I watched my teammate die in my arms during a mission that officially never happened. Her voice shook slightly. For 25 years, I've carried that loss in silence. Today, I'm honoring her memory by telling the truth. Jennifer spoke next, her voice controlled but emotional. I'm Jennifer Kim, call sign Razor. I joined Echo program in 1991. I was 24 years old and desperate to prove that women could do anything men could do. I succeeded. We all succeeded. But in 1996, politics caught up with us. There were people in Washington who didn't like the idea of women in combat roles, especially in special operations. They shut down Echo program, sealed our records, and made us sign non-disclosure agreements. They told us our service was too sensitive to ever be acknowledged. Then it was Linda's turn. She stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding, very aware that this was being broadcast live across the country, that Daniel was watching, that the Marines from Paris Island were watching, that the world was watching. My name is Linda Garrett, she said quietly. My call sign was Nightingale. I served in Echo program from 1989 to 1996. I earned my SEAL Trident. I conducted classified operations. I saved lives and took lives, and then I walked away and spent 20 years pretending none of it ever happened. She took a deep breath. 3 weeks ago, I attended my son's graduation from Marine Corps boot camp. I was just a proud mother in the crowd. But someone noticed the Trident tattoo on my wrist, the one I'd kept covered for 2 decades. They asked questions. I tried to deflect, but the truth started to come out anyway. Linda looked directly at the cameras. I didn't want to be here today. I wanted to stay invisible. But then I watched as people on the internet called me a fraud, as they said my service never happened, as they claimed I was seeking attention or stealing valor. And I realized that by staying silent, I was allowing our story to be erased. I was allowing the sacrifice of the women I served with to be forgotten. She gestured to the 3 women beside her. We're here today to petition the government to declassify Echo program, not the operational details. We understand that some information must remain protected. But the basic fact that the program existed, that we served, that we earned our place among America's special operations forces. We deserve that acknowledgement. And the women who are serving today, who are fighting for the right to serve in special operations, they deserve to know that others came before them. Catherine returned to the microphone. We're prepared to answer questions within the limits of what we can legally and ethically discuss. The press erupted. Dozens of hands shot up. Questions came rapid fire. How can you prove this program existed? Do you have documentation? Why should we believe you? Margaret Chen stepped forward. We have submitted to the Department of Defense a formal petition for declassification, along with supporting documentation that includes service records, training certificates, and testimony from senior officers who commanded ECHO program. Admiral Sarah Wilson, former commander of ECHO program, is here today and can speak to the program's existence. Admiral Wilson stepped up to join them. I commanded ECHO program from 1991 to 1996. These women are telling the truth. They served with distinction, honor, and courage. Their service has been classified for 25 years, but that doesn't make it any less real or any less valuable. A reporter stood up. Admiral, if this program was so successful, why was it shut down? Politics, the Admiral said bluntly. In 1996, there was significant political opposition to women in combat roles. Despite ECHO program's operational success, there were people in Congress and the Pentagon who believed women should not be in special operations. They had the power to shut us down, and they did. Another reporter, Mrs. Garrett, your son just became a Marine. How does he feel about this revelation? Linda hesitated, then answered honestly. He's processing it. Finding out your mother has been keeping a significant secret for your entire life is difficult. But I hope he understands that I kept quiet not because I was ashamed, but because I was ordered to, and because I wanted him to have a normal childhood. Ms. Morrison, you said a teammate died. Can you tell us about that? Catherine's expression hardened. Her name was Sarah Chen. She was 26 years old. She died during a classified operation in 1994. She has no headstone that mentions her true service. Her family was told she died in a training accident. She deserves better. They all deserve better. The questions continued for over an hour. The four women answered what they could, deflected what they couldn't, and stood together as the world finally saw them. When the press conference ended, they gathered in a private room backstage. All four women looked exhausted but also relieved. We did it, Patricia said, almost in disbelief. We actually did it. Now comes the hard part, Admiral Wilson said. The Pentagon will review your petition. There will be investigations, interviews, verification processes. It could take months or even years. But it started, Jennifer said. That's what matters. Linda's phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Mom, I'm watching. I'm proud of you. We need to talk, but I'm proud of you. Tears filled Linda's eyes as she read the message. Catherine noticed, your son. Linda nodded. He's proud of me. As he should be, Catherine said firmly. You raised a good man while carrying secrets that would have broken most people. That's its own kind of heroism. Over the next days and weeks, the response to the press conference was overwhelming. Military veterans, both male and female, reached out with support. Women currently serving in special operations roles called the 4 ECHO program veterans heroes and pioneers. But there was also backlash. Some former SEALs claimed the women were lying, that ECHO program never existed, that it was a publicity stunt. Some politicians called for investigations into why classified information was being revealed. And some people questioned why the women had stayed silent for so long if their service was so important. Linda tried to ignore the criticism, but it was hard. She did interview after interview, repeating the same information, answering the same questions, defending her service over and over again. 2 months after the press conference, she received an unexpected visitor at her home. It was Gunnery Sergeant Williams, the Marine who'd confronted her at Daniel's graduation. Ma'am, he said when she opened the door, I owe you an apology, a real one, not just the one I gave you that day. Linda invited him in. They sat in her living room, and Williams looked uncomfortable. I've been in the Corps for 20 years, he said. I've served with some of the best warriors this country has, and when I saw your tattoo that day, I thought you were stolen valor. I thought you were disrespecting something sacred. He paused. I was wrong. I've done the research. I've talked to people who knew about ECHO program, and I've read everything I could find about what you and the other women did. You earned that Trident. You earned my respect, and I'm sorry I questioned you. You were protecting something important, Linda said. I understand that. Still, I should have trusted that command knew what they were doing when they told me to back off. Williams pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is from my commanding officer and some of the other senior Marines at Parris Island. We took up a collection. We want to commission a plaque for the ECHO program operators, to be displayed at the SEAL Memorial in Virginia Beach, if they'll allow it. Linda opened the envelope. and found a check for $5,000 along with a letter of support signed by dozens of Marines. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll accept it," William said. "Say you'll let us honor your service even if it took us too long to recognize it." After Williams left, Linda called Catherine, Patricia, and Jennifer. They decided together that if the SEAL Memorial would accept a plaque, they would match the Marines' donation and make it happen. 3 months after the press conference, Linda received official notification from the Department of Defense. ECHO program was being partially declassified. The existence of the program, the names of the participants who consented, and the basic operational parameters would be released to the public. Specific mission details would remain classified. It was a victory, though not a complete one. More importantly, the 4 women were officially recognized as qualified SEAL operators. Their service records were updated. They would be eligible for the same benefits and recognition as any other special operations veteran. Linda held the official letter in her hands and cried. 25 years of silence, of hiding, of pretending to be someone she wasn't. It was finally over. Daniel came home for a visit that weekend. He'd been stationed at Camp Lejeune, and this was his first leave since graduation. They sat together in the kitchen, and Linda showed him the official documents, the recognition, the acknowledgement. "I'm sorry I kept this from you," she said. "I'm sorry you had to find out the way you did." Daniel took her hand. "Mom, I understand why you did it, and honestly, it makes everything make sense. The way you are, the things you taught me, the strength you showed raising me alone, it all comes from who you were and what you did." "I'm still just your mom," Linda said. "You're not just anything," Daniel corrected. "You're a veteran, a hero, a pioneer, and yeah, you're also my mom. But I'm learning that those things aren't separate. They're all part of who you are." He pulled something from his bag, a framed photo. It showed Linda in her Navy uniform from 25 years ago, young and fierce, wearing the SEAL Trident on her chest. "Where did you get this?" Linda asked in shock. "Admiral Wilson sent it to me. She said you deserve to have it displayed, and I agreed." Daniel set it on the kitchen table. "I'm proud of you, Mom. I'm proud of everything you've done, and I'm proud to be your son." Linda pulled him into a hug, tears streaming down her face. "I'm proud of you too, so proud." That night, Linda unpacked boxes she'd kept in storage for years. Inside were her medals, her certificates, her commendations, all the physical evidence of a service she'd been forced to hide. She set them up in her home office, no longer hidden, no longer secret. The SEAL Trident on her wrist was still there, but now it didn't need to be covered. Now it was a symbol she could wear openly, a reminder of who she'd been and who she still was. Linda Garrett, call sign Nightingale, was invisible no more. 6 months after the declassification of ECHO program, Linda stood at the SEAL Memorial in Virginia Beach. She was flanked by Catherine, Patricia, and Jennifer, the 4 of them together in public for one of the rare times since the press conference. Behind them stood dozens of current and former special operations personnel, including Admiral Wilson, now fully retired but still commanding respect in her civilian clothes. And in front of them was the newly installed plaque, bronze and gleaming in the morning sun. "In honor of ECHO program, 1980-91996. 5 women who proved that courage KNOWS no gender. Their service was classified, but their sacrifice was real. KAT Chireni Hawk MORRSON. PATRISA Ghost RODRIGUZ. Jennifer Razor KIM. LINDA Nightingale GARTT. Sarah CHEN 1960-81994. Linda's hand went to her heart as she read Sarah Chen's name, her fallen teammate, finally acknowledged after 25 years. She would have loved this, Patricia whispered beside her, tears in her eyes. The ceremony was simple but powerful. A Navy chaplain said a few words. Admiral Wilson spoke about the legacy of ECHO program, and then each of the 4 surviving members laid a white rose at the base of the memorial. When it was Linda's turn, she knelt down carefully. Her leg still gave her trouble sometimes, and placed her rose next to Sarah's name. "We did it," she whispered. "We told your story, rest easy." In the crowd, Linda spotted Daniel in his dress uniform, standing proud and tall. Beside him was someone Linda hadn't expected to see, Colonel Brennan from Paris Island, the man who'd recognized her as Nightingale. After the ceremony, the colonel approached. "Mrs. Garrett, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For being brave enough to step forward, for making it possible for the truth to be told." He gestured to the memorial. "When I was pinned down in Iraq and your team came to extract us, I asked the team leader, why you were risking your life for Marines you didn't know. Do you remember what you said?" Linda shook her head. That mission was a blur of adrenaline and fear. "You said because every person in uniform is family, and you don't leave family behind." Colonel Brennan's voice was thick with emotion. "I've carried those words with me for 25 years. I've used them in speeches to my Marines, and today I can finally tell them who said them." He pulled something from his pocket, a coin, military issue. "This is from my current Marines at Paris Island. They wanted you to have it." Linda took the coin. On one side was the Marine Corps emblem, on the other engraved words. "She was invisible until we learned to see. Thank you for your service." Linda couldn't speak. She just nodded, clutching the coin. Daniel approached after the colonel left. "Mom, there are some people who want to meet you." He led her to a group of young women in Navy uniforms. They looked nervous but determined. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we're all in the process of trying to qualify for special operations programs. When we heard about ECHO program, about what you and the others did, it gave us hope. It showed us that women have been doing this all along, even when nobody knew about it." "We wanted to thank you," another young woman added, "for paving the way, for being pioneers." Linda looked at these young women, strong, capable, ready to serve, and felt something shift inside her. The weight she'd carried for so long, the guilt over Sarah's death, the regret over the years of silence, it all felt different now. These women were her legacy, not just the missions she'd run or the lives she'd saved, but the path she'd helped create for those who came after. "You don't owe me thanks," Linda said. "You're doing the hard work now. All I did was kick open a door. You're the ones walking through it." "But you kicked it open when nobody was watching," the first young woman said. "That takes a different kind of courage." The weeks that followed brought more changes. Linda was invited to speak at military academies, at veteran organizations, at events for women in the military. She declined most of them. Public speaking wasn't her strength, but she accepted a few. At the Naval Academy, she stood before an auditorium full of midshipmen and told them about ECHO program. Not the classified details, but the spirit of it. The determination, the sacrifice, the belief that service mattered more than recognition. "Some of you will serve in ways that can never be publicly acknowledged," she told them. "You'll do things that officially never happened. You'll make sacrifices that no one will know about, and you might wonder if it's worth it, if anyone will care." She paused, looking out at the sea of young faces. "I'm here to tell you that it is worth it. Your service matters whether anyone knows about it or not. The lives you save, the threats you counter, the mission you complete, they all matter. Don't measure your worth by public recognition. Measure it by the impact you have and the integrity with which you serve." The applause that followed was thunderous. But not everyone was supportive. Linda received hate mail from people who thought women shouldn't be in combat. She faced skepticism from some SEAL community members who still questioned whether ECHO program had been real or just a political stunt. One day, she received a particularly vicious letter claiming she was a disgrace to the SEAL community and should be ashamed for seeking attention. Linda read it once, then filed it away. She'd learned that not everyone would understand or accept her service, and that was okay. The people who mattered, her son, her fellow ECHO program veterans, the young women she was inspiring, they understood. That was enough. 3 months after the memorial dedication, Linda received a phone call that changed everything again. "Mrs. Garrett, this is Captain Lisa Morrison from the Pentagon. I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected to receive the Defense Distinguished Service Medal for your work in ECHO program." Linda sat down heavily. The Defense Distinguished Service Medal was one of the highest awards in the military, typically reserved for senior officers. I don't understand. My service was so long ago." "The award is being given retroactively, along with awards for the other ECHO program members. The Secretary of Defense wants to formally recognize your contributions to special operations and to advancing opportunities for women in the military." The ceremony was held at the Pentagon, with the Secretary of Defense personally presenting the medals. Linda, Catherine, Patricia, and Jennifer stood together as their citations were read. detailing their service in carefully worded language that acknowledged their achievements without revealing classified information. Sarah Chen was also honored posthumously, her medal accepted by her elderly mother, who wept as she learned for the first time what her daughter had really done. Daniel attended in his dress uniform, standing at attention in the audience, his face beaming with pride. After the ceremony, the Secretary of Defense pulled Linda aside. "Mrs. Garrett, I want you to know that your decision to come forward to push for declassification, it's changed policy. The Pentagon is now reviewing other classified programs from the past to determine what can be safely acknowledged. You've opened a door for dozens of veterans who served in silence." "I didn't do it alone," Linda said. "Catherine, Patricia, Jennifer, they're the ones who initiated this. But you're the one who was discovered first. You're the one who had the choice to stay hidden and chose to stand up instead. That matters." As Linda drove home that evening, the medal in a case beside her, she thought about the journey she'd traveled. From serving coffee at her son's graduation to standing in the Pentagon receiving one of the military's highest honors. From invisible to visible. From silent to speaking. Her phone rang. It was Admiral Wilson. "Congratulations on the medal," the Admiral said. "Well deserved." "Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for supporting us through all of this." "I should have fought harder to keep ECHO program running back in the 90s, Wilson said. "I should have pushed back against the politicians who shut us down. I've regretted that for 25 years. "You did what you could in the circumstances you faced," Linda said. "We all did." "Still, seeing you four standing there today, finally getting recognition, it felt like closing a circle." The Admiral paused. "I'm proud of you, Nightingale, proud of all of you." A year after the press conference, Linda received an invitation that surprised her. The current SEAL training class at Naval Special Warfare Center wanted her to speak to them about mental toughness and overcoming obstacles. She almost declined. Speaking to active SEALs about her service felt presumptuous. After all, she'd been out of the field for 25 years, and the operational environment had changed dramatically. But Catherine convinced her. "They're not asking you to teach them tactics. They're asking you to inspire them, to show them that the warrior spirit doesn't die just because you take off the uniform." Linda agreed. Standing before the class of SEAL candidates, all men, though the program was now officially open to women, felt surreal. These young men were going through the same hell she'd endured 3 decades ago, but they were doing it openly, with support, with recognition. "I'm not here to tell you how to be a SEAL," Linda began. "You have excellent instructors for that. I'm here to tell you what comes after, because eventually your time in the teams will end. You'll retire, or you'll be injured, or circumstances will change. And when that happens, you'll have to figure out who you are without the uniform." She told them about serving in ECHO program, about the pride of being part of something important. Then she told them about the years after, about feeling lost and purposeless, about struggling to find meaning in civilian life. "For 20 years, I tried to forget who I'd been. I thought the only way to move forward was to leave my service behind completely." Linda shook her head. "I was wrong. The skills you develop here, the mental toughness, the dedication, the commitment to something bigger than yourself, those don't go away when you take off the Trident. They're part of who you are." She looked at each candidate. "When your time in service ends, don't hide who you were. Don't be ashamed of what you accomplished. Find ways to channel that warrior spirit into whatever comes next. Teach, mentor, serve your community. Your service doesn't end when you leave the military. It just changes form." The candidates gave her a standing ovation. Several approached her afterward with questions, wanting to know more about ECHO program, about her missions, about how she'd maintained her edge during years of civilian life. One young candidate asked, "Ma'am, if you could do it all over again, would you still choose to serve in a program that couldn't acknowledge you?" Linda didn't hesitate. "Yes, because the service itself mattered more than the recognition. The lives I saved, the missions I completed, the teamwork and camaraderie I experienced, those were real, whether anyone knew about them or not." As she left the base that day, Linda felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. She'd been afraid that speaking to active SEALs would make her feel inadequate or outdated. Instead, it had reminded her that she still had value, that her experience still mattered. 2 years after the press conference, Linda received word that a book was being written about ECHO program. A respected military historian had been granted limited access to declassified files, and wanted to interview all the participants. Linda agreed, as did Catherine, Patricia, and Jennifer. Over several months, they sat for interviews, sharing stories that had been locked away for decades. When the book was published, Silent Warriors, the true story of ECHO program, it became a bestseller. Military personnel read it. Veterans read it. Young women considering military service read it and saw possibilities they hadn't known existed. Linda did a small book tour, appearing at military bases and veteran events. The attention was still uncomfortable, but she'd learned to handle it better. At one event, a teenage girl approached her with a copy of the book. "Ms. Garrett, I'm thinking about joining the Navy. I want to be a SEAL. My parents think I'm crazy, but reading about you and the other ECHO program women, it made me believe I could do it." Linda signed the girl's book. "You can do it. It won't be easy. You'll face doubts and obstacles and people who say you don't belong. But if you want it badly enough, if you're willing to work harder than you've ever worked in your life, you can do it." "Did you ever doubt yourself?" the girl asked. "Every single day," Linda admitted. "But I kept going anyway. That's the secret, not having no doubts but pushing through them." Daniel, now a sergeant and considering trying out for Marine reconnaissance, attended one of Linda's speaking events. Watching his mother on stage, telling her story with confidence and pride, he barely recognized her as the quiet woman who'd raised him. After the event, they had dinner together. "You've changed," Daniel observed. "You seem lighter somehow." Linda thought about that. "I spent 20 years carrying a secret that felt like a weight. Now that it's out, now that people know the truth, I don't have to carry it alone anymore." "Do you ever regret coming forward, giving up your privacy?" "Sometimes," Linda admitted. "There are days when I miss being invisible, when I wish I could just be regular Linda Garrett without all the attention. But then I meet a young woman who's been inspired by my story, or I receive a letter from a veteran who felt unseen until ECHO program was acknowledged, and I remember why it was worth it." She looked at her son. "You know what I regret most? All those years I spent thinking my service didn't matter because it wasn't recognized. I wish I'd understood sooner that the value of what I did wasn't dependent on whether anyone knew about it." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad you came forward, Mom, not just for all the women you're inspiring, but for me. Growing up, I always knew you were strong and capable, but I didn't understand where that came from. Now I do, and it makes me want to live up to that example." 3 years after the press conference, Linda received an invitation to the White House. The president was hosting an event honoring women in the military, and ECHO program veterans were to be recognized. Standing in the White House alongside Catherine, Patricia, and Jennifer, shaking hands with the President of the United States, Linda felt the final pieces of her journey click into place. The president pulled her aside for a brief private word. "Mrs. Garrett, I want you to know that your decision to come forward changed policy at the highest levels. We've declassified 3 other programs similar to ECHO, acknowledging the service of dozens of veterans who'd been forced to remain silent. You started something important." "I just told the truth, Mr. President." "Sometimes that's the most courageous thing you can do." That evening, after the ceremony, the 4 ECHO program veterans gathered in Catherine's hotel room, just the 4 of them. "Can you believe we've come this far?" Jennifer asked, still holding the commemorative plaque they'd received from the president. "I never thought this day would come," Patricia admitted. "For 25 years, I thought ECHO program would stay buried forever." "Sarah would have loved this," Catherine said quietly, raising a glass. "To Sarah and to all of us who served in silence." They toasted together, 4 women who'd been through hell and back, who'd served their country without recognition, who'd finally stepped into the light. Linda looked at her fellow warriors and felt gratitude wash over her. She'd found her tribe again. She'd reconnected with the part of herself she'd tried to bury. And she discovered that you could be both, a warrior and a mother, a SEAL and a civilian, someone with a classified past and a public present. 5 years after the press conference, Linda stood once again at her son's graduation, this time from Marine reconnaissance training. He'd made it through one of the most grueling programs in the military, following in both his parents' footsteps. As she watched him receive his insignia, Linda thought about the journey she'd traveled. From that day at Paris Island when someone noticed her tattoo, to standing in the White House, to this moment watching her son achieve his dreams. The trident on her wrist was no longer covered. She wore it proudly now, a symbol of who she'd been and who she still was. After the ceremony, Daniel introduced her to his instructors as my mom, former Echo program operator. The instructors treated her with immediate respect. One of them said, "Ma'am, we've updated our curriculum based on some of the techniques from Echo program that were declassified. Your work is still saving lives." Linda felt tears in her eyes. Her service, done in secret so many years ago, was still making a difference. That evening, she sat with Daniel at a quiet restaurant, just the two of them. "I'm proud of you, son," she said. "Your father would be so proud." "I'm proud of you too, Mom," Daniel said. "For everything, for raising me, for your service, for having the courage to come forward when you could have stayed hidden." "I had to," Linda said simply. "Not for me, but for Sarah and the others who couldn't, and for the women who are serving now who need to know they're not the first." Daniel took her hand. "You know what the best part is? Growing up, you taught me that real strength isn't about being the toughest or the loudest. It's about doing the right thing even when it's hard, about serving something bigger than yourself, about integrity and honor. I thought those were just lessons. Now I know they were your lived experience." Linda smiled through her tears. "They were your father's lessons too. He lived them every day." "I want to live them too," Daniel said. "I want to serve the way you both did, with honor, with dedication, with courage." As they left the restaurant that night, Linda looked up at the stars and thought about James, her husband, who'd died serving his country in secret. She thought about Sarah Chen, who'd given her life in a mission that officially never happened. She thought about all the silent warriors throughout history who'd served without recognition. And she made a promise to them. She would keep telling the story. She would keep advocating for veterans whose service remained classified. She would keep inspiring the next generation. Because that was her mission now. Not running operations or saving lives in the field, but ensuring that those who served in silence were never forgotten. Linda Garrett, call sign Nightingale, had been invisible for 20 years. But now she stood in the light, using her voice to honor those who still couldn't speak. And she would continue to stand, continue to speak, continue to serve for as long as she had breath in her body. Because once a warrior, always a warrior. The uniform might change, the mission might evolve, the recognition might come late or not at all. But the commitment to service, that never dies. And Linda Garrett was living proof of that truth.